Hi, good morning, Dr. Mathur. Can you hear me?
Morning, everyone. I hope I'm audible.
You are on mute, Dr. Mathur.
Okay, I hope I'm okay now. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Akshay, I
Can hear
cannot
you.
hear you.
Can Amit hear me?
Hi. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Dr. Mathur. Can you hear us?
I can hear you clearly.
Okay, perfect. Good morning, Dr. Jain. Can you hear us? Amit, can you hear us?
Yes, please. Yes. Okay.
Okay, great. All right. Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today in morning. We are gathered here to we are gathered here to discuss the challenges and opportunities and the lessons from India that can be applied to the small island developing nations. And this event is a part of the Lighthouse initiative. It is a collaboration between the World Bank Group, International Solar Alliance, supported by FCDO, that intends to leverage India's experience to support and develop the sector in various countries, including the small island nations. My name is Ashay. I work with Intellicap, and I will be your host for the morning. Throughout the event, please feel free to post the questions that you may have, and we will try to take them up at the end. To give a little bit of context, small island developing nations are considered to be highly vulnerable to the impact of global warming, despite being the lowest contributors to climate change. Their power generation is largely dependent on fossil fuels.
Akshay, we lost you.
Can't hear anything, can't see anything.
I think there's some connectivity issue at the pavilion. I'll just get back.
Okay. Meanwhile, I think we can move forward. Let me introduce Ms. Xiaodong, lead energy specialist from India, to give the opening remarks. Just Xiaodong, as you know, we have been in long-term partnership with ISA for many, many years now, and Lighthouse is one of the premier collaborations with ISA. The concept of ISA, the Lighthouse, is to take the learnings of India on renewables and spread it across the world. In the first series of webinar we did with Africa, where India learnings were shared with Africa, and today is the second series in the Lighthouse where India learnings will be shared with small island developing states. Xiaodong, over to you.
Thank you, Amit. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Honorable Director General ISA, Dr. Ajit Mathur, Honorable Deputy Minister, Environment, Climate Change Technology, Republic Maldives, Mr. Ali Majid, distinguished panelists, and everyone. It's really my pleasure to open this webinar. Like Amit said, we had a successful Lighthouse event with African countries a few months ago. And developing solar in the island nations is not only critical for the climate change, but I think more importantly is to really reduce the high cost and heavy reliance on fossil fuels. I used to work in Fiji, other island countries, and I know that the high cost of diesel genset is really an important issue, a constraint, I would say, for energy access. And given the declining cost of renewable is really now become the lowest cost to supply energy in island nations. And a focal area of this initiative is World Bank taking the India's success story for solar to the small island developing states. The Lighthouse initiative, as Amit said, is an attempt to bridge knowledge and technology gap among the small island developing states by introducing the best practice from the Indian success solar story that would help the island nations to also scale up yours. So the recently launched 5 megawatt solar power project in Maldives is really a game changer because it's the first at this large scale, for the first time in the country. And a close collaboration between the World Bank and government of Maldives. The project resulted in significant investor interest and led to one of the lowest tariffs in the island nations. The project is a turning point of the journey of Maldives and small island developing states, indicating the potential of solar in these countries to enable just energy transition, not only again to mitigate climate change, which the island nations are the most vulnerable for, but also to reduce your dependence on high cost of fossil fuels. I think particularly at this uncertain time with the fossil fuel availability and price volatility. Based on the Lighthouse Initiative report, the solar island, the small island developing nations now increasingly embracing solar energy, and collectively the current capacity in the island states are about 2.3 gigawatt. So the Indian success story to scale up the solar from nascent megawatt scale to today more than 60 gigawatt is a very good story and lessons to learn for the island nations. And 3 key challenges continue to impact the solar power in the island nations: the lack of scalable technology, unlock access to low-cost financing, the lack of technology know-how, and the mini grids, but with limited energy storage. So lessons from India can be useful in developing the key solar technology in the island nations. And so, for example, the utility scale solar park in India, and the utility scale floating solar, and the rooftop PV, particularly for the commercial industry clients, and the mini grids, the solar mini grids. So these are quite important lessons from India to the developing, to the island nations. And the World Bank in India, the World Bank has financed the 2 flagship solar projects we are quite proud of. I think it can be quite replicable to other countries, including the island nations. The first is the solar park project, and the World Bank have $100 million with 75 million World Bank financing blended with 25 million clean technology fund, which is highly concessional financing. That led to this financing financed the shared infrastructure of the solar parks, which I think is the backbone of the scale up success story of the solar development in India. And this $100 million blended World Bank concessional financing led to directly about 2.5 gigawatt and influence another 5 gigawatt solar parks. So that's about more than 40 times leverage of private sector investment. And I think this is really key. We were just in the India G20 energy transition working group yesterday with Dr. Ajay Mathur. And I think they were, this how to leverage, everybody talk about this trillions of dollars requirement for climate financing, and how to use the limited public funds, low cost and concessional financing to achieve significant leverage of private investment is really the challenge to every country to overcome the climate challenges. So I think this is a very good example. Another flagship projects that actually led by our own Amit in India is the rooftop PV in India. So when the project started, the rooftop PV is, I would say, one of the most difficult market segment of PV, and was in a nascent stage of a megawatt scale. And with our World Bank funding, blended with Climate Technology Fund, which is the concessional and blended with grant, to provide technical assistance to build ecosystem, working with a local financial institution, the State Bank of India, and really helped open up the market and contribute to the ramp up of the rooftop PV market in India to about 8 gigawatt today. And now the Amit and the team is really focusing on another, I would say, the most difficult part of the market segment, which is residential and small, medium-sized enterprise for rooftop PV. And also the three-tier risk mitigation structure also worked wonders in the Maldives. The tariff have gone down from 8 cents to come down to 9.8 cents, and investors' interest in bidding increased to 63. This is, I think, a very good example, even to other island nations. Maldives did it, so other island nations, is much more also replicable to other island nations. And the roadmap of scaling up solar in the island nations require inclusive, diverse applications, planning, strategic activities, and effective implementation. Actually, I would add that the most important perhaps is the policy. In India, they have the first have the net metering, the incentive for the rooftop PV, and the government target coupled with the solar park initiative, with the auction for bidding, and that significantly drive down the cost. So I would say those policy and initiatives in India is really the cornerstone of India's solar success story. And so India is setting ambitious targets, I mentioned, and have a dynamic regulatory framework from feed-in tariff to auction. I want to say that India auction is one of the success. We're not only now today telling the island nations, we're also telling this story around the world. We had this workshop, I remember some years ago in the Asian countries, even the big economies. Everybody have feed-in tariff very high, even Vietnam, for example, 9-point-some cent feed-in tariff. And we have seen many country after country, once you change your feed-in tariff auction, the renewable price cutting by half or more than half. And India also is now focusing energy storage as the salary service to mitigate the grid integration with increasing share of renewable. So there are multiple benefits of scaling up solar in the island nations. Well-developed deployment of solar for traditional application is the mainstream for now. It can be enhanced by employing emerging technology like the floating solar, for example, green hydrogen, and energy storage. So in closing, leveraging key lessons from India's success solar trajectory is essential to unlock the solar potential in the small island developing states and provide access to clean, reliable energy. I look forward to hearing from the rest of the delegations and also the suggestion solutions from the panelists to overcome the challenge to develop solar in the island nations by leveraging best practice from India. Thank you very much.
Asha, in case you're speaking, we are unable to hear you. We still can't. So
Maybe Amit.
maybe Amit can take over. Yeah.
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Now we can.
Yes. Perfect.
Okay, great. Thank you. Right. So Thank you, Dr. Wang, for that insightful welcome and for sharing your perspective with us. International Solar Alliance has been instrumental in promoting, assisting, and funding solar energy across the globe, moving rapidly towards creating a sustainable future by harnessing the power of the sun. Dr. Mathur, the Director General of ISA, has been at the forefront of this journey, acting as a guiding light for the solar space. With his immense experience and wisdom, it is my privilege to welcome Dr. Mathur for giving us his perspective and for sharing the lessons from India and what he sees is the future for small island nations. Dr. Mathur, please welcome.
Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, dear dignitaries, including Mr. Ali Majid, fellow solar enthusiasts, I extend a very warm welcome to all of you to this webinar organized by the International Solar Alliance, the World Bank, and supported by the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy of the Government of India and the FCTO of the Government of UK. This webinar is a step forward in understanding mechanisms, approaches, and ecosystem that enabled India to craft a regime for success in the energy transition journey away from the very centralized approach that it had used in the years past, including funding that was provided from the national budget. The Lighthouse Initiative, as Xiaodong mentioned, is a partnership between the International Solar Alliance and the World Bank, which aims to enable knowledge sharing and the transfer of experience, technology, and investments in the solar energy sector to the large ocean countries who are unfortunately in international parlance referred to the small island developing countries. However, when I refer to SIDS, I am referring to the large ocean states. At the ISA, we are a global international alliance, and we are dedicated to promoting clean energy access, energy security, and facilitating the rapid transition to clean energy mix in all our member countries. We work, as the ISA, we work to unlock the solar energy potential through focused analytical support, thematic programmatic support, capacity building, and creating an ecosystem for the solar energy sector to thrive. We are delighted that this Lighthouse webinar aimed at the SIDS, the large ocean states, aims at providing the kind of advocacy, the kind of experience that we have seen occur. And Xiaodong, you took the words out of my mouth when you spoke of the kinds of experiences that we could talk about. We have been supporting our member countries through various applications, whether it is promoting solar in agricultural use, the solar pumps, whether it is grid connected projects, many of which we talked about. The Xiaodong spoke of the auctions, how they brought down the prices, the rooftops, which Amit has been so instrumental in enabling a market. And I think this is one of the keys that we see, that you have to try to see how we create a market from where there was none earlier. We are looking at solar mini grids. And as Xiaodong mentioned, solar mini grids today have the potential to provide the cheapest energy in many unserved communities. They're certainly cheaper than imported diesel. And this, I believe, is a here and now solution that can, with appropriate institutional mechanisms, be transferred to the SIDS countries. We are also delighted that we are using the opportunity of the India Energy Week to provide this Lighthouse webinar. We strive to build lessons from the ISA's and India's solar journey into actions for other countries. The presence of the world's largest organizations in this India Energy Week conclave is a testament to the leadership position it has in the global energy arena, especially also, I would suggest, in the renewable energy and solar sectors. Solar, we believe, is a crucial and essential element of the energy transition, and it reduces the emission profile, obviously, of the power generation sector, but it enables countries to achieve their NDC and net zero commitments across the economy. It's obviously important for the electricity sector, that's where we start, but the impacts are cross economy. We are with the SIDS countries. As Xiaodong mentioned, they are the most vulnerable, yet they face extinction. It's an existential threat because of global warming. We will work with you to see how we can exploit the abundant solar resources that are available to increase the share of clean energy in power generation and also reduce emissions. The Lighthouse initiative is completely focused on enabling that. Whether we look at the best practices, learnings, and lessons for the development of the solar system, or we look at the kinds of approaches, all of this through this initiative help provide experience in what works. But more importantly to me, they provide experience in the kinds of ways in which you can start from scratch and see how you create a demand, because other countries in similar positions have been able to be successful doing so. We note that as far as the SIDS countries are concerned, and as far as India was concerned, we faced daunting challenges regarding the limited availability of technical and in particular financial resources to the governments. We believe that the learnings that we have had show that it is possible to facilitate the deployment of solar energy and the development of an institutional sustainable ecosystem which makes us go ahead. I would like to emphasize that we obviously learn from experience, but I think it is up to us to ensure that these institutions are robust, and if I can use the word, that they are solid over time. We look at the institutional resolve in moving ahead. We obviously face very strong lobbies in terms of the fossil fuel importing lobbies, and those are issues that we will have to look at from the point of view of how they benefit from the transition as well. It is best to see how we can make convergence happen rather than an outright confrontation. We hope that the lessons that are showcased by the initiative will help in the deployment of renewables in general and solar in particular in many of the SIDS countries. These obviously highlight the favorable elements required for scaling up, but also provide lessons, as I said, in institutional development. The World Bank, the FCDO, and we at the Solar Alliance look forward to enhance the uptake of discussions. We stand ready to use this as the first step to create roadmaps on what the countries can do, what are the kinds of benefits that flow, whether it is reduced expenditure on imported fossil fuels or providing electricity to communities which is difficult or expensive to meet. We look forward to work with you in the SIDS countries to enable solar to become the energy source of choice in all the region. Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Mathur, for that unparalleled perspective on the Indian and the SIDS solar sectors and the learnings that we can get from each other. Moving on, we have with us the godfather of the solar sector in India, the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, Government of India, which has played a critical role in taking the solar sector in India from a few megawatts in 2010 to over 60 gigawatts in 2022. I would now like to invite Shri Lalit Bohra, Joint Secretary, MNRE, to deliver the keynote address and share India's incredible journey. Sir.
Yeah, good morning. Dr. Wang, Dr. Ajay Mathur, Dr. Amit, and His Excellency Ali Majid, Deputy Minister of Environment, Climate Change and Technology, Republic of Maldives, and my fellow panelists, and ladies and gentlemen. Are we audible? Okay. Yeah. So, like the global transition to RE has been focused to achieve energy security in the most sustainable manner. The concept of energy security generally revolves around the 4 A's, that is availability, affordability, accessibility, and acceptability. However, for the SIDS country, another A comes into picture, which is adversity in terms of geographical and climate condition, land scarcity, high cost of procurement and project development, lack of concessional financing, etc. SIDS are a special and unique part of the global family. Historically, power system in SIDS has been based mostly on the conventional generation, such as diesel and the hydro power generation. In the last few years, we have seen a strong commitment from several SIDS countries for adoption of the RE. Many have started to integrate their renewable into the electricity mix. Due to particular geographical and the social economic condition of the SIDS, important benefits are expected to be achieved with this transformation. This include in particular reducing dependency on the fossil fuel, which many SIDS now rely on for power generation. With the integration of large and variable RE into their grid, SIDS will have to face the challenge of stability and reliability of the power supply. To achieve this, a suitable planning in terms of policy and regulation, infrastructure, operation, and forecasting would be required. I believe India has something to offer in this regard, considering our experience in the renewable. India stands fourth globally in renewable energy installed capacity, that include the large hydro, fourth in terms of the wind power, and fourth in terms of the solar capacity. In line with Honorable Prime Minister's announcement in COP26, the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy is geared up for achieving the target of 500 gigawatt from non-fossil fuel capacity by 2030. So far, we have been able to achieve about 175 gigawatt, which include large hydro and nuclear. And about 75 gigawatt of the solar projects are in the pipeline at the various stage of development. And out of this, 120 gigawatt is the renewable energy, which mainly include winds and solar. During the last 8 years, India has witnessed the fastest rate of growth in the renewable energy among major developed countries. The installed renewable capacity has increased from 76.37 gigawatt to more than 167 gigawatt in last 8 years. Out of which the solar energy growth has been more than 20 times. In India, the solar sector journey on this road has not been easy. However, with the dedicated efforts of all the stakeholders, which include all the RE developers as well as the ministry, which include Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, Ministry of Power, and other line ministries, the country is cruising ahead on this path. Backed with strong technical studies and sincere effort, our country has been at the forefront in expanding the RE portfolio. India's success in this area can be attributed to the multi-pronged approach. The four major areas on which India has targeted are policy making, regulatory and infrastructure aspect, financial aspect, and the marketing aspect. I'll just go one by one on these areas. Like on policy aspect, the declaration of the various national missions, which started with the National Solar Mission and just announced the hydrogen mission. On the demand side, we started fixing the renewable power obligations on the utilities. Open access rule were liberalized. We permitted 100% foreign direct investment into renewable energy sector, and that too through an automatic route. The interstate transmission was waived. The solar projects, including RE projects, were given the must-run status. Offshore wind sector is being developed, and now we are working on the hydrogen mission. So these were the areas where a lot of policy initiatives were taken. On regulatory and infrastructure aspect, the states were persuaded and the handholding was done through various agencies so that the metering regulation in all states are notified for the RE tariffs. Building bylaws were changed. Green energy corridor was announced so that there is a smooth and easy evacuation of the RE power. India has a 172,000 circuit kilometer of the grid, and which is one of the strongest grid. And that is the reason that we could integrate about 175 gigawatt of the renewable into this grid without much of the reliability issues. Solar park schemes were announced and standard of RE component were set up. The standard bidding guidelines were issued. The system of e-reverse auction was introduced, which resulted into reduction in the RE cost. Energy storage is being introduced, and various rules under Electricity Act were enacted to enable the RE sector. On the financial front, the tax benefit accelerated, depreciation was provided, custom duty concession and excise duty was given, various schemes for the viability gap funding, and central financial assistance was provided. The renewable energy funding was included in the priority sector lending, which resulted into a reduced interest rate. The PLI scheme was introduced so that the India becomes Atmanirbhar and we have a sufficient module manufacturing capacity. As of now, India is in a position to manufacture more than 22 gigawatt of module. And it is expected that after the completion of all the PLIs, we will be able to produce more than 70 gigawatt. That include the upward integration from polysilicon to wafer and cell. Concessional financing through multilateral financials was provided. Apart from that, the ministry started various programs in order to have the decentralized renewable energy. As Dr. Wang and Dr. Ajay Mathur has said, that the solar rooftop program for residential sector was started, where the central financial assistance was provided to the individual household, and the process was made more and more liberal and more public centric. Apart from that, in order to target the agriculture sector, which is a major consumer of the electricity and both diesel, the de-dieselization of the agriculture pump scheme was initiated in the form of the PM Kusum. There again, the government provided a financial assistance for the smooth transition from the diesel pumps to the solar pump. In order to have the big scale or large scale solar park, the solar park scheme was announced, where the utilities, level, gigawatt level of parks were commissioned in India. Public awareness initiatives were done. And last but not the least, to have all these RE integrations, we need the manpower. So to have the manpower, Ministry of New and Renewable Energy started funding a NCPRI center at IIT Bombay, which took the lead in the form of making the curriculums, and that resulted in having a sufficient manpower which can handle at the top end, so that we have graduate engineers, we have masters and PhDs who are in the renewable sectors. And in order to see that we have a sufficient manpower at the maintenance level, the ministry started the Surya Mitra program. So that Surya Mitra program started developing a manpower which is available in nook and corner of the countries to handle this RE integration. So R&D program was also initiated so that we can move ahead with the world to have the latest of the solar technologies. The approved list of module manufacturers were done just to ensure that the quality solar modules are available. And green term market was initiated so that finally we have a efficient energy market in the country. With all these efforts, India is moving ahead, and we are quite optimistic that we will be able to achieve 500 gigawatt of target by 2030. All these initiatives and the coherent and the cohesive efforts of the renewable energy developers along with the ministry has been resulted into India being now the, among all the major economy, the fastest RE integrating countries. In the last, I appreciate the efforts made by the ISA and World Bank for taking this initiative for the SIDS country. And I look forward to a very fruitful discussion ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for giving us the MNRE perspective and for highlighting the initiatives that MNRE has taken to scale up solar in India. And I'm sure this is going to be very valuable for other countries as well, who are looking to undertake similar policies to get the scale up. We will now move on to the presentation by Intellicap, and I now invite Mr. Santosh Singh, Managing Director Intellicap, to present the findings of the Lighthouse initiative implemented by Intellicap under his leadership, which has generated insights and lessons for India's solar sector success story and developed a roadmap for 6 countries to scale up their solar sector. So over to you.
Thank you, SI. Good evening to the honorable governments, colleagues, and my fellow panelists and different from MNRE. I will take around 10 to 15 minutes to give some broad messages that we got from analyzing India's success stories and how India's success story can be inform the other countries' journey towards the decarbonizing to solar, especially in the context of city. I'll ask my colleague to kind of set the presentation. We are not in a very ideal kind of setup, so I will rely on some backup, but hopefully we would. Yeah, are you? Okay, somebody is running the slides, but you see the slides. Just give me a heads up in the participants.
Santosh, we can't see the slides on the screen right now, but in case you want us to share from here virtually, we can do that as well.
Yes, please do this query, and I will ask you to kind of move the slide. That's better.
Sure, let me try to share.
If we lose the connectivity, yeah. While Prachi is putting the slides up, I think what I'm going to present is the work of a lot of consult, analysis of technical literature review, discussion with it, and synthesis of many of the findings. And this would be available in a form of report with a number of case studies, what we are giving you is, succinct summary of that you can look at that. Okay, so the slides are up. So, I'm just on overall journey of India, the solar sector, which I think my colleague from MNRE have very lovely, kind of highlighted, and always proud to feel the story of India's solar success. So always glad to talk about that. Then we talk about what are the key things that resulted into that success. Sir has given some perspective, but I think I'm going to re-summarize it for the broader context adoption. Then the role of World Bank and how World Bank played a catalytic role in achieving this success and what they achieved through that. We are going to give you a brief overview of how we see the role of solar sector where in the context of states and what could be the recommended roadmap for states and what we will achieve if we implement that roadmap. A lot of things to talk about that. I think slides are verbose, but they are meant to be so that people can read out of them. I'm not going to repeat all of that. So if I just go to the India solar story, I think numbers, I don't want to repeat, but just want to highlight one part and adding additional point to, our MNRE colleagues' point is that India's success of solar story is not driven by the large scale utility only. We covered almost every segment and there are success stories in all the segments, which is often overlooked considering that India's success stories are very big. We're talking about 60 gigawatt plus, and we see the huge numbers. But the point I want to highlight that be utility scale solar, be rooftop solar, be off-grid solar, India looked at each of the segments, understood their nuances, and did exactly what was needed to kickstart that sector. And these segments are very critical, different kind of economic activities. So it is also critical that we understand solar's role, not only in kind of megawatt scale, but understand where it can play a role. Prachi, move to slide. Now, Sir has talked about what worked well for India, and he was giving lots of examples. And these examples range from considering about the need for manpower to agile policies to giving the risk mitigation mechanism. But if I have to summarize, there are three pillars to success. The first pillar was a strong policy and regulatory push. And this resulted into many of the missions coming into thing. National Solar Mission was a kind of one of its kind effort to kickstart solar. Then we have number of innovative schemes, solar parks, ultra megawatt coming and supporting that. But the last part is not visible there. One of the key hallmarks of India's success story was the dynamism of seed. As we got some problem solved, new problem highlighted, we changed the policy roadmap, we changed the responses. And I don't think anybody would have imagined to bring down the cost of per kilowatt hour to the level that we had envisaged. So the dynamism, the agility of the policy framework is one big meta level learning that we have from India. While we can talk about individual measures, but how we responded to that, that's what the second pillar was making affordable financing available to that. This was a big challenge. And we can support segment specific finance credit kind of solar. And then innovation in the way financing was done. So it was not only reducing the cost of capital, it was also about knowing the nuances of a particular segment and customizing for that and using the right kind of financing tool for the sector. The third part, what we call improving the bankability, the financability, the viability of the solar projects. So while we can club multiple things together, but what inherently we did, we made the solar projects commercially attractive. And now building on what we did. Yes, and mechanisms were introduced. Those were phenomenal at that point of time. World Bank Group bringing all the expertise, putting support. Institutional capacity building, be in terms of human resource, technical, etc. That was one hallmark. And then looking at some of the biggest risks that were associated with solar sectors, like off-taker risk and how to address them. So these three hallmark of India's solar. And I number of case studies that we have done, people can go into it. Kind deconstruct the India's big numbers, but not what all went. Prachi, can you move to? Okay, so since workshop seminar, what about the states? And considering India's mammoth growth story of 60 gigawatt solar, some of the segments never get talked about. But for SIDS, what is relevant is that the way we looked at our islands and small scale solar to do that. And it's not that we have not done well. I think our success stories are very phenomenal. But I will talk about what are the learnings that we can, take away from India's success story to other SIDS, installations. And one big thing was that India's commitment to carbonize the island's power needs. So there was a commitment to, take the diesel out of what can be done. And obviously, there were a number of challenges. So we identified, technological where standalone backed up by battery storage or a float solar or micro mini grid that we looked at. So there are success stories of each kind of technological combination as well as financing combinations where we private sector or we got the viability gap funding of a 40% support in terms of project cost to make it viable. So there are case studies. I think luckily is a good one where we got the 100% power from renewables to be and this company that we can explore. We also look at the success story of NLC that commits about power, solar project in South Andaman. So NTPC has been doing phenomenal work with 25 megawatt solar plant with based in Manglutan. So what we are trying to highlight is that while India's solar success story had not been focusing on these segments, but we have tried to capture the nuances of how these can be taken to success. So that's the main kind of focus for us. If I have to summarize, right kind of technology that India adopted for right kind of finance mechanism and right kind of institution to execute that. I think critical is to have institution have a very nuanced understanding of that space. Prachi, right? Now coming to the role of World Bank, World Bank has phenomenal, and this we have kind of discussed many times. But if you look at what they did, they converted a nascent market of solar to a huge lighthouse impact for the world. The way solar can be scaled, and they had a very segment specific approach. They focus on solar parks as well as the rooftop solar. They had the similar kind of instrument, providing catalytic capital, so that some of the the barriers in the viability, barriers in the risk can be addressed, and we achieve the crowding of the private capital, make the scale happen. These again have been very well documented in the case study that we're talking about, be the IBRD support or some of the nuances there. But one thing that is very encouraging for others to see, World Bank technically created $40 of value and the money to flow for every dollar they invested. So their impact on scaling up was phenomenal because of the right kind of tools they choose, the right kind of intervention they did. And that's, I think, the biggest takeaway. These are all very well documented in the case studies, so I'm not going into details. These case studies are worth pursuing, and these will be available in the report. But World Bank, learnings, both in terms of financing, technical understanding the space, is something that can be said that was a big force to achieve India's solar success story. Next slide. Now, if I look at the the typical SIDS energy requirement, the numbers might seem lower compared to India. And I always talk about the story that when we talk about the 60 gigawatt, we don't see small segments being critical for many of the small nations, but they are very critical. So for the SIDS, solar could be a very potent source of energy. And I'm not going into details of what the potential is, but there's a fair amount of potential untapped for the states that could be leveraged to meet their energy goals. If you look at that, current renewables, the graph shows that 38% is growing 27%, and limited in others. But also, you look at that, this is merely Pacific and others are very small components. So we are trying to kind of see how these small island nations can identify the right kind of technological solution to do that. But solar can be a very important source for transformation of its energy needs. Next slide. Now, one of the key technological solutions that we have explored, and many of the experts that we consulted from the states, they talk about floating solar. That makes a very logical sense because they don't have that much access to land. and this could be one of the ways to kind of do that. However, it is not that easy. It has not been that scaled up. There are many considerations when you start talking about, solar, floating solar. One is that, do you have the appropriate marine size? Do you understand the size, wind load, waves, and all this? There are a lot of technicalities to understand how the floating solar can be done. We have to also be careful about the environmental impact of what we are doing because of the biodiversity, etc. Component cost and economic viability. They're the four factors that typically define the success of floating solar. There are many countries who have done that, but to give you the key challenges and how we can overcome for this segment, one is that this is considered a very, very risky segment by investors because the small people have not done that. And this demands that we consider risk mitigation instrument to de-risk this instrument because of be it the guarantee or insurance, so that the investors' confidence is built because they still perceive this as a very, very risky segment. The second one is that they don't see a huge pipeline of the project, so they don't want to commit to this space. With a limited pipeline, they always see that, okay, there's no pipeline, so committing to this particular segment is not that rewarding. And there need to be a lot of, support to create a pipeline. While we talk about giving some kind of, technical assistance to develop the project, visibly, grant and other kind of financing so that the project development cost can be brought down, as well as some kind of guaranteed financing support so that the pipeline of the project can be created. This is a big, big challenge. And the last one is that considering these, projects require a fairly complicated technical know-how, that technical know-how is not present in many of these locations we're talking about. While we have other things covered, but getting the technical know-how at the space is difficult. So floating solar has a huge potential, but I think if we can de-risk and create a pipeline of project and have the technical know-how for that, this segment could be unlocked for many of these things. We have talked about that in the space later, but I think there's a summary of why solar is taking up. Next slide. The next one is, the rooftop solar. I think rooftop solar potential is slightly limited because of, depending on the kind of island you're talking about, the kind of but this still remains a viable form of energy for, CNI segment and segment that could benefit from that. Again, when we talk about several examples, we have analyzed that how Mauritius, Maldives, and, Caribbean islands have done that. But if we look at the kind of challenges, the slightly different challenge set than the others. One is that the disaggregated kind of approach that we take. So how to kind of aggregate the investment there, how you can get the rooftop solar installations to come together to be, of sizable nature to do that. And that requires, again, how to de-risk that, get the risk mitigation instrument at that level, which requires a different approach than what we're talking about for optical risk and others. There's slightly different approach for that. Again, the limitations on the battery storage, the cost elements, etc., becomes a challenge for this segment. So we have to have a good techno-commercial understanding that how we can make these seamlessly connect to the grid and benefit from the success that we had in India in rooftop solar with other majors. This again segment requires a fair bit of planning at the the island level, that what we are trying to achieve, what we are trying to kind of put a roadmap. We have discussed this in the roadmap segment, but this is another segment that we see can play a very critical role in the state. Prachi, next slide. And we have covered a number of case studies where these kind of interventions have been done. And one such case study is the Aspire program, World Bank in Maldives. It's a 27 million program, and with a two dual objective: enable private sector investing in PV infrastructure and diversify the investment base. So there's two broad objective, and this has been a very, very successful program. And I think the way we look at that, just 20 to 40 megawatt of solar PV capacity in 5 years with $84 million investment. It's a sizable effort for island nations, and the World Bank has done a number of things right. I think the point I would like to highlight that if you look at how World Bank approached that, there were three things they did very well. One was technical assistance, which is often needed to make these segments be better part of the strategy. So World Bank supported Maldives government in all the technicalities. Then the subsidy or the concessional capital, the financing of $6 million to the project, and then the kind of security mechanism, the guarantee mechanism that we're talking about in terms of $20 million that they're doing. There were a number of risks that they mitigated. Government limited access to PPP, which was the World Bank came handy to kind of support that. The small market size and remoteness, they got into aggregation and make that happen. They had investor concern about the challenges in different kind of risk associate, and World Bank went with the guarantee and the risk allocation mechanism to kind of look at that. So all of these kind of resulted into, and the point I'm saying that from the program that World Bank had designed, they did not look at one instrument, but an overall approach that how we can make this happen. If there are 3-4 challenges to solve, we have a approach to solve each of that thing. If the government is not able to handle that, we'll come and support government. If financiers are seeing that this is a riskier space, we'll come to the risk thing. If the capital cost is too high to kind of make that impact, we'll lower the cost of capital. So this approach, which Aspire has been practicing, is a very good learning for other geographies, other kind of government counterparts to focus on. Next slide. And if you look at some of the other segments, I think we talked about the floating solar and rooftop solar, but there are several other segments that there. You have solar mini grids, you have solar home systems, you have solar, kind of pumps. These all can contribute to that, and each of these segments have a different kind of risk profile, different kind of approach, and different success stories. We have talked about how solar mini grids. I think there are Cook Island has a good success story to look at that. The 95% of annual demand, they are meeting with this. If you look at solar home systems, Tonga has done that. If you look at solar pumps, Fiji has done that. So we went into each segment, each states where they have done it and how they have kind of achieved. Are covered into the detailed report that we're talking about. So I'm not going to details for the sake of time, but if you look at some of the kind of key intervention that has been done, one was that how to make these segments part of the national energy agenda, because without that, it's not visible. How we can look at the policy that provide anchor load to that, so that there is some kind of demand supply. How we can get the financial institution to provide low-cost financing for that critical challenge. How we can provide the training and technical assistance for the on-the-ground installations, and several others that we have built on. So this is another segment could be leveraged if we know a island profile of energy needs and the resources they have. Then you can look at which of the component is ideal for that and how that can be used. Next slide. So, there are several examples that we have quoted. I think Seychelles and Fiji, I think we'll hear from these examples more, but Seychelles and Fiji are the two we went into some detail. And if you look at that, the kind of potential they have and what kind of investment need they have, we need to kind of see a kind of approach that how we can go into a focus way, the way we have done it in India, the way we have the World Bank has done in many other geography, to make these, the scaling up of solar possible. The challenges we have looked at primarily goes into the financing and technical financing, again, being the high risk perception, the size being low, the kind of challenges investors seek for the kind of capital they put is not very attractive to them. But also the technical challenges universally came into the limited availability of skilled resources, not only the human resources, but also the institutions that can play some role. They are also technically not experienced handling this kind of interventions. So that's another. If you look at Fiji, we are talking about $200 million investment need. And again, the segment that we are talking about there is, you can look at multiple, but you are talking about grid connected PV and DRE. And for that, you have to, again, how you are going to enable the grid connections or seamless connectivity into the grid of these interventions that are challenged, because that requires a very different kind of approach to work with the grid and all the components to make it, very smoothly implemented. Next. Now, if you look at some of the solar opportunities that, while we talk about energy needs, but there are many other opportunities that are very, very attractive for the, states. One such is green hydrogen, which is throwing a big opportunity for them. Solar-powered green hydrogen generation for domestic consumption or for other demand sector is big opportunity. and this could result into a huge push for solar solution in that space. Singapore is already doing this, and you can look at how we can learn from that and take the learning to others. Island nations and the islands are often struggling with the availability of fresh water for drinking water. Desalination is one of the critical things they require, and solar can play a huge role in that because of the technologies have become mature, and there are many case studies that we see that have already been done. Mauritius and Rodrigo Island, they have all a success story that can be brought there. So, heating and cooling, transport, we have seen the solar power transport option both for land and on the sea can be available. So what we try to look at that, where are these kind of opportunities emerging? And if there is a success story, some island has done that, can we take the learnings and see other islands would benefit from that? So the idea is that not to give a suggestion, but also see if it has been done somewhere and what are the learnings from that. Next slide. Now, having said that, what we have covered so far, that there are lots of learning. We understand that island nations need to leverage solar because that's one of the most attractive options for them. We also understood that there are different segments, different kind of opportunities, and they have a different kind of risk. But what could be a roadmap for this particular transition? And while it is very difficult to cover a roadmap that covers very diverse set of islands, very diverse set of geographies and sizes, etc., but you can still make an attempt to see what is the top level steps that need to be done. For us, we have phased this into 3 areas. One is that envisioning and planning, then you build the strategy and you implement it. I have not done the slide on India, but I have also looked at the way India did it. They put all the policy, they put the strategy and implemented it. The creation of institutions, the creation of measures. When they decided that this is the goal we want to achieve, they created the institutional infrastructure, created the human resources, and them. So first step is to kind of create a vision and plan what you want to achieve. Second is that what kind of strategy you have, whether you want to address a particular challenge that you have identified, say availability of capital, de-risking, the technical thing, and then you go to implement that. So technically, this takes 1 to 5 years. These are not very stacked. But if you look at step, what typically happens in the strategy phase, you start looking at the segment-specific targets. You should have very clarity that, okay, these are the segments, this is the target we have, that's a part of our vision exercise. Then you start looking at doing the studies and understanding that if this is the target, what are the challenges for different segments? What would be the regulatory measures that could be needed? And at the end of this phase, you often have a very clear outline of what is the solar capacity target you have and how you want to go about that. Once you know that this is the target we are chasing, then we go into the strategy. Here we start looking at what kind of technical resources required, what kind of financing is required, what kind of risk mitigation instruments are required, what kind of institutional infrastructure required, and then we start working on that. That creates all the building blocks for the implementation that follows. So there are investors ready to finance. There are technical resources available for taking implementation. There are project developers knowing how to develop the project and their challenges. And then comes the project development part where execution happens. So this roadmap has been fairly nuanced in the overall report that we'll share, but the idea was to come up with the strategy that a six nation can see, and this is the way we want to go about that. The first 1 or 2 years, we have clarity about what is our potential for solar, and these are 2 solar segments will focus. For these 2 solar segments, there are 3 major challenges we need to address. These challenges need to be addressed with these particular strategic roadmap. For example, I will give subsidy or I will get private investment data. Whether we will provide stopgap financing or viability gap funding, these are the strategic options they choose. Once they choose the strategic option, they go into creating the institutional infrastructure and participation. So this is the roadmap that we have. Can I go to the next slide? Now, this is the slide where we talk about what we all will achieve. We get all this right. If we kind of meet our goals of getting 3 to 4 kilowatt power solar in these states, we are talking about unlocking almost $5 billion revenue and creating more than 10,000 jobs. That's the top level. Also, I think one of the key things I'm now factoring in all the conversation is the decarbonization, what value it adds. And there's not a theoretical value. Carbon markets have picked up. India is launching, many countries have launched. So if we just look at the carbon market that has been done, it would be looking at something in the range of $400 to $500 million coming to carbon. Why this number is critical? This number is critical because you can use this capital to leverage it more time. Just example, the way World Bank did, they leverage 1 to 40. Every $1 invested, there is 40. Even we achieve this to 10 times, then we are going to reach the 5 billion number. So I think with this, I would look forward for your comment, inputs. Can you go to the next slide? That's the email address for the team. So if you have any comment, share you the details. The reports would be released soon. You have case studies, and we look forward to having your comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Singh, for taking us through the presentation. We will now quickly move on to the panel discussion, which will focus on discussing the challenges and opportunities for scaling solar in the six nations, and provide perspectives from a range of key stakeholders. For this, I'd like to invite Dr. Jain to moderate the discussion and also introduce the panel and take it forward. Over to you, Dr. Jain. Amit, if you can take over.
Shay, there's a bit of a connection issue. Just give Pamit a second. He will be on.
Okay, sure. In the meantime, I will introduce the panelists. Today we have Mr. Lalit Bohra, from whom we just heard. He's a Joint Secretary at Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, Government of India. We also have with us joining virtually Ms. Deepak Chand, who is the Deputy Director of Department of Energy, Fiji, and has over 1.5 decade experience in policy formulation, renewable energy, and rural electrification. Then we also have with us, who is physically present here, Dr. Chandok, who is the General Manager and Head for International Business at NTPC. And we will also hear ISS perspective from Mr. Rajesh Jain. Amit, I can see you there. Over to you now to moderate the panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Akshay. I will dive directly into the panel and request first Joint Secretary Mr. Lalit Bohra to intervene. Mr. Bohra, as you know, rooftop solar is one of the technologies which can be easily replicated from, for example, the models which we have in India to small and island development states. We were giving a little bit of example from Maldives. Now these countries are very dense and there is hardly any space for solar parks. The only technologies which are applicable is probably floating solar and solar rooftop. So what is your guidance, Mr. Bohra, especially given the models we have in India for small island development states? How can they replicate solar rooftop business models in their countries? Over to you, Mr. Bohra.
Thank you, Amit. As you know, in India, when the residential rooftop system was introduced, and even in the C&I sector, there are continuous challenges. And we are still facing the challenges from the discoms and other things. So it's not an easy path, but as you have said very rightly, this is the most suitable for the state's country. So my suggestion or intervention in this regard would be like this, that it has to be a multi-pronged approach, what India has done. The local discom will have to be as receptive to accept, and they have to do the policy changes in the form of the net meterings and others, so that the residential rooftop and the C&I rooftop is being integrated into their system. At the same time, since the cost will be too high, especially for the SIDS country, some sort of the financial support, either in the form of the EG finance or others, has to be provided. So once that is there, then an individual will be more than willing to go there. And the third point, which is very essential for the rooftop segment, is that it has to be integrated in a manner with the existing grid. because you see, an existing consumer is not very keen on going for renewable. His first priority is to have a universal energy access. So if we say that by introducing a rooftop, we are going to reduce your energy, we are going to reduce your electricity, he is not going to accept it. So the solar system need to be integrated with the existing grid of the SIDS country in such a way that the spikes which are coming in the solar segments after a certain capacity is being reached ultimately does not affect the final consumer. So if all these fronts, the countries started working, then things will be much better. Like in case of India, where like Gujarat, which now has a residential rooftop of more than 1.4 gigawatt. So even with having a strong grid and distribution network, we have started facing the spikes. So later on, as is RE is a sector which is new for everyone. It's for the developed countries as new as for the underdeveloped and the developing countries. So everybody is working together. And in that case, like once your solar increases to a certain level, then the storage has to chip in. And that's why the India has done that it has started working on the storage part as well. So these are the 3-4 areas where they start working, and then certainly the residential and the C&I sector will pick up. That's my take.
Thank you very much. Mr. Buddha, I know you have to go. One last question from you before you leave. Now, utilities feel, not only in India but in SIDS countries as well, that the commercial and industrial and to some extent residential as well are the cash cows where their main customers, when they install solar rooftop, they will incur losses. So they are very reluctant to give net metering connections. In India, despite solar rooftop being a clear business case, we are still facing challenges, and one of the biggest challenges is how to convince utilities. Now, to some extent, and if we are real and practical, they do lose some business. Not a lot, but they do some percentage of the business. And the transition cost and time for utility to go and check and do a smart meter and do a net metering connection is, to some extent, it is a little bit of a challenge for utilities. So what is your suggestion, again, given the experience from India for SIDS? How can we convince utilities in the game? For example, there was a Kerala model and to some extent Gujarat model where utilities can become rescos or the assets could be on the books of utilities. But still that is also a little bit slow in taking off where utility could themselves install solar rooftop. What is your guidance on that?
Yeah, Amit, you have rightly said. It's not only a challenge in India, I think it's a challenge world over, that the acceptance of the renewable energy by the utilities. But you see, it has to be again a multi-pronged approach. We have to do the capacity building of the utilities. And first of all, we have to understand at like through the various forums and seminars, we are trying to convince the utilities that the energy consumption in India, and that applies to even the SIDS country, per capita is too low. And with the time, the energy consumptions are going to increase. I'll give you a simple example. Like Modera is a village which we have solarized. So before it was solarized, the energy consumption was say 40 units per person. With solarization and availability of the electricity 24/7, the per capita energy consumption has more or almost tripled. So like if the country has to grow, if the SIDS country or the India has to grow, then the per capita electricity consumption will increase. And in that, if you have a electricity generation at a distributed level, then it in turn reduce the pressure on the distribution network as well. So like that is one approach where we have to convince the utility that this is the future. And utility does get convinced. It takes time, but it's a hard task, but it needs to be done. So that's a one part. The second part is that the fear of utility that my customer will go away need to be compensated in one form or the other. Because we can't have utilities which are bleeding and then we want electricity for everyone. So some financial model need to be brought in where we can say that, yes, you are not going to lose it, but these are your subsidized customer. So at least let us do away with this. Like in case of India, we came with the virtual net metering regulations now. So the virtual net metering regulation was simply to tell the utilities that, look, your rural consumers are one where you are giving a subsidized electricity. So let's go for the rooftop installations in the rural area and where the people doesn't have a pakka chat, where they does not have a roof. Let's go and permit them to have a virtual place where they can put their network, solar network, and have the benefits of the electricity. So that will be a win-win situation for both the consumer as well as the utility. So we have to come out with such kind of models, and it's a continuous process. It cannot be a one-time strategy. It has to be continuously done at the various levels through capacity buildings, to various programs and other things. And then only it is possible. But I personally feel that distributed renewable is the solution. And as I always say, that you can delay a technology, you cannot deny it. So it will happen, and it will certainly happen. Thank you.
I couldn't agree with you, Mr. Bora, more. Decentralized and solar rooftop is the way to go. There's a logical technical solution. You produce and you consume at the same point. You save for T&D losses, and there are a lot of other technical advantages. As you know, from the World Bank, we have $1 billion program in India. So that is probably one of the largest programs of the World Bank anywhere in the world, and we are very proud to be partners with you and MNRE to take this mission forward in India. And in fact, we are replicating India's model in not only Maldives but Seychelles, Mauritius, and in Caribbean islands. Because what is said and done, we have 7 to 8 gigawatts in India on solar rooftop, and we are behind you. We are backing you to take this revolution forward. Again, thank you very much for your time, Mr. Bora. We really learned a lot from your experience. Now we'll move to Mr. Deepak Chand from Fiji. Deepak, thanks a lot for joining us. You heard government officials from India discussing about role of solar, role of renewables in India. We have had good experience in some of the other island countries on solar, floating solar and storage. Could you please describe the steps taken by the Fiji government towards net zero, towards energy transition, spanning across grid upgrade, across storage technologies, across solar and wind? Over to you, Deepak.
Thank you, Amit, and thank you, International Solar Alliance, for the workshop today. It was a great evening. Actually, it's almost 6 o'clock here in the evening. It was a good learning experience from the India's energy system. Basically, I would like to just quickly give a brief introduction on Fiji's energy scenario. Basically, Fiji has ambitious target in renewable energy generation, in particular in power sector, basically to produce 100% renewable energy by 2036, and also to have 100% access to electricity to all Fijians by 2026, reducing carbon emission by 0.04% to 0.03%, and also to go carbon neutral by 2050. Currently, Fiji is producing 55% of its power production from renewable energy. 50% is coming from hydro. Solar is a bit less at the moment, but however, it has covered a large area. It is around 1%. Biomass is 2%, and other renewable energy is around 2%. The rest, 45%, is coming from fossil fuel. 80% of the population in Fiji are connected to grid. So basically, there are 20% which is yet to be connected to the grid. And out of the 20%, 4% do not have any access to electricity. 12% of our population have access from solar energy. 4% are from diesel generator. This is in remote areas. So basically 12% which are from solar, these are from the solar home system, solar hybrid system, and also from solar grid connect system. Basically in terms of solar energy, solar technology in Fiji, this technology is quite old. Basically in Fiji, we were using in drying system and then it came to electricity part. Basically solar water heaters are popular in Fiji, particularly in high cost housing and tourism sector. Off-grid PV solar system have been installed in Fiji since 1980s. Given the significant decline in system cost and continued advancement of technology, solar PV has become preferred technology for rural electrification. Basically for Fiji's geography, it has become a proven technology in terms of electrification. This is in areas which are mostly in maritime, isolated and far remote areas. Fiji installed over more than 4.5 megawatt installed capacity, which is around 14,000 solar systems from past 10 years. Fiji has invested around $25 million to provide some basic form of electricity to people in rural areas, in maritime areas. And basically they are able to use 40 amp hour per day system. And customers are able to use TV, use a radio, charge laptops, use phones and other electrical loads which are less than 300 watts. We have also installed few solar energy storage and generator hybrid systems in the island. Basically, this is used to actually supply at the same level of service which we get in urban area, in the rural area, which is also, we have to think, a common demand coming from these rural areas where they want to match the service, the same service which we have in urban area, in rural areas. And what we have found out that the hybrid system is the best thing to go. To actually meet them, considering the location of the system. The service are almost equal to the grid level service with the hybrid system. So basically the total capacity of the solar rooftop panel is around 5 megawatt. It is quite less at the moment, but we are slowly increasing, and these are in terms of resorts, hotels and commercial building and houses. Basically coming to your question, basically I think that comes to where we actually relates to our policy matters in Fiji. Basically, Fiji has just recently come up or have introduced with some policy work since after COVID period. Fiji has now SDG 7 roadmap. Basically, this actually encourages sustainable energy, including solar in Fiji. Fiji has just actually came up with the rural electrification policy. It has been endorsed by Parliament, and actually we are using our rural electrification policy, which promotes a lot of solar technology. Basically, this is in terms of solar hybrid, solar home system, and also a grid connect system, which actually promotes the solar technology in our national grid as well. We are working, Fiji has completed its national energy policy. This is also, it takes a holistic view of Fiji's energy sector and subsectors and put forward a clear objective that seek into ensure that our decisions are informed by strategic analysis, foresight, and proof of concept. The policy also ensures a bound by the environmental and economical parameter that are ensure safe and secure and sustainable energy supply. Basically, the policies which we have, it also take care of enabling environment, climate change related policies, and also overall business environment in Fiji. Basically, for enabling environment, all policies, including related legislation, laws, programs, and plans, are governed by a long-term vision to 2030, and also medium-term development plans under which sectorial policies are developed. Climate change related policies, these are mostly the Climate Change Act and National Climate Change Action Plan, which is aligned to our NDC and recognize the role of the private sector in addressing climate. There is a highlight of for the need of private sector investment in transition towards the low carbon climate resilient development pathway. Solar technology is mentioned as one of the favorable way for the potential technology investment in Fiji. In terms of overall business environment, Fiji has impacted badly with COVID-19 pandemic. 1/3 of our GDP was gone because our tourism sector was impacted badly. And in terms of doing business and enabling environment for cross-border investment, these are very important factor in terms of investment decision. Overall regulatory environment for foreign investment in Fiji is supportive in terms of all policies which are coming out now. But there is no specific constraint identified for the payment, in terms of to getting the private sector investment in Fiji. So basically, we encourage a lot of private sector investment to come in and invest in Fiji in terms of solar technologies. We also have the IPP agreement. We are trying to amend all those agreement through our distributed network operator, which is EFL. Currently, there was a bit tough scenario set up for actually private sector to come in and invest, but now they are actually relaxing all those agreement. Basically, one of them are actually the backup. We know that solar is intermittent. Even though we can use solar and promote it hard, but actually what happens, it has a limited capacity. So basically, in terms of backup, we also need a clean and renewable energy technologies. So basically, the terms and conditions which are set up to get those PPA, your cost of electricity is actually less. And now the AFL has actually relaxed on those areas. So they are actually encouraging private sector investment to come in and actually invest in Fiji. And also, just recently, just for your information, basically there was a divestment done in Energy Fiji Limited, which is basically to actually promote or to see how the company can actually diversify in terms of renewable energy participation and get more investors to come in and invest in Fiji to get 100% renewable energy by set of target for which is by 2030. We have actually carried out or worked with other agencies in terms of standards and regulation. We have Fiji has now the API standard amended. So we have a recent standard which has come out, which promotes or which take care of the renewable energy application and technologies. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the detailed explanation on what Fiji is doing. Now, can I move to Mr. Ramesh Kumar from ISA and share with us the different initiatives which ISA is taking in SIDS. I know, Mr. Ramesh, you are a veteran in renewables, you are a veteran in solar, and initiatives like mini grid, solar park, solar rooftop. ISA is spearheading these efforts in many countries of ISA. I request you to focus on SIDS, what initiatives ISA is taking. Over to you, Ramesh ji.
Amit, just a small correction there. We have Dr. Jain joining us in Ramesh's place from ISA. So, Dr. Jain, if you could address the question that Amit has posed. Over to you. Thank you.
I'm R.K. Jain. Amit, in place of Ramesh, I'm attending on behalf of Ramesh, on behalf of ISA. And first of all, I would like to mention here that I am very fortunate to be a part of, not only a witness of, but rather than part in first-hand experience of the entire solar of India in the right from the early 80s to this place. I have witnessed solar journey from decentralized system with battery backup to the grid tied system, right from kilowatt to multi-megawatt, right from rural area to urban areas. So I'm the witness, and I've been the part of this entire journey of India, and I have seen all the stages. And fortunately, right now I'm the part of ISA, and here in ISA, as already been discussed, just on the lines of our experiences from the journey of India, we are supporting the island nation in formulating their policy and regulatory framework, which is going to up of mini grids and mini grids, rooftop and solar park in as per their requirement in their country. We are also helping them in capacity building of their policymakers, of their engineers, and of their engineers and people from the experts from their ministries. So we are also helping them in setting up uh, various, testing and other facilities and technical assistance program in their country. Right now, in a few island nations, we are also helping them with our demonstration projects, which are going to be, we are very much sure that such projects, demonstration projects with the help of grant in aid, and these projects will be setting up examples for their people, and they are going to, they are likely to be increase the demand so that they can be scaled up easily. So this way, ISA is these are the ways ISA is helping these island nations. Over to you, Amit.
Thank you very much, Rameshji. Rameshji, one last question before we move on. Now, in the latest collaboration with many other partnership you have, for example, with Rockefeller Foundation, with ADB, and with World Bank, how are you trying to integrate, for example, storage with solar in the countries in which you are operating?
Uh, this journey, solar storage, I don't think it is a new thing here for India. And all the decentralized systems have to be backed up with the battery storage, especially decentralized systems like solar home lighting, solar street lighting, and various other decentralized systems which are going to help uh, energy access in those islands, in those areas which are remotely and scatteredly located with very, thin population density, they are going to be there. So battery has to be a part of those places. Now coming back to your main question of integrating these things. So we are supporting these nations for various new business models and new financial instruments like blended financing and other means to scale up these battery-backed system like off-grid systems involving mini grids for their population and various rooftops, mini grids and decentralized systems. So we'll be helping them with various financial tools and business models, innovative business models. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, moving to our last panelist, Dr. J.S. Chandok. Now, Dr. Chandok, NTPC is now growing very fast and especially internationally. Now, you have been leaders, of course, in India in spearheading the renewables, but I see that now NTPC is looking at international business in Africa, in LAC also for renewable products. Can you please tell us in detail what kind of products are you looking and what stage these products are? Over to you.
Thanks. Thank you, Amit. Very good morning, everybody. Hello. Thank you, Amit. And first of all, I thank the International Solar Alliance platform to giving this opportunity to NTPC. In fact, Mr. Amit, this question is very relevant as on date because NTPC has spread their wings all across African country as well as the Latin American country. You may be knowing that we are endorsed as a consultant to International Solar Alliance. And through that route, we are already executing around 6.5 gigawatt of solar park capacity in 12 countries, where we are the project management consultant, PMC consultant. And in the project management consultant part, we are not only giving only the technical assistance, but right from the concept to commissioning, that means identifying the land, coordinate to the final commissioning of the activity and bringing the investor. For that, the financing and all those aspects, including the power purchase agreement, internet, this IAs, and all those things are part of that thing. So with respect to the PMC, we are supporting these countries, directly talking to their government, as well as finding out what policy reforms they can do, because we already know that it is not only the technology which plays an important role, but it is a triangle of three important components. That means the technology, policy, and finance. Now, with these three components, we are interacting with different countries and trying to find out the best solution for them. Because as you know that these countries are also having a very major issue with respect to the transmission infrastructure. And even if we come with a 1,000 megawatt or 100 megawatt or 500 megawatt of ground mounted system, their capacity of absorbing such type of power may not be there as on date. So how to do the phasing of those plants, how to do the policy in this form, that is a very important part which we are taking care of. And in that respect, with respect to the exact status as on date, we have come up with a request for qualification for the Cuba, where we are basically having a 1150 megawatt capacity, which can come up in the all across the Cuba. The plant sizes are very small size in the sense of 5 megawatt to 20 megawatt kind of a thing, which are spreaded around 175 locations. And bringing all and assimilating all this 175 location to the various part of the grid, and at the same time doing the kind of a engineering part of this thing and doing the request for qualification, selecting the developers is a challenging task which we are already doing. And at the same time, there are investors which are interested in this country. We are talking to them as well. Apart from that, in Africa, we are very advanced stage in discussion with Mali, where we are setting up of 100 megawatt of solar project along with the 20 megawatt BESS system as well, where their location, which is a Kolikori location, is basically not having that much of power available, and they are getting the power from the Bamako, that is their capital. So we are trying to do some kind of a decentralization as well as the grid connection both, so that the load center can get the power from the same power plant with the BESS, as well as the extra power can move to their capital. So various type of technological intervention and the policy intervention we are doing with respect to those countries. And apart from the solar park, we are also very much active in the six country, LIDS and SIDS countries, which is the topic of the today. We doing already doing the PMC consultancy for the 21 countries with respect to providing the demonstration project, in the sense that these demonstration projects are basically with respect to their solarization, the health center solarization, solar pump, as well as the cold storage. So we believe that this is not the one solution which provide the total solution to this. There are multiple technology which needs to be provided to such type of countries, and that is the reason we have spreaded this type of PMC to the different countries. And based on those things, we are giving assistance in the form of technology as well as how to multiply such type of solution, so that they will not only rely only on the generation part of this thing, but at the same time, they will be in a position to utilize that in a proper manner. So that way we are spreading through ISA platform. And in the similar manner, we are through the competitive route as well as the non-ISA platform also, we are executing the like 2 megawatt floating solar consultancy we are doing in Mauritius, where we are completely helping them to find out the investor as well as the technical assistance. And very soon they will be coming up with the 10 megawatt and 15 megawatt floating as well. As you may be knowing that NTPC is pioneer in the floating PV, and we have already set up 100 megawatt floating PV plant in India itself, where basically we are executed, even our electrical systems are also floated on the water bodies. So that type of infrastructure we have created in India, we wanted to take that technology throughout world, and those understanding and those knowledge we wanted to take. So both in the ISA platform as well as non-ISA platform, we are doing the PMC consultancy as well as different type of solution to their country, so that we can improve their energy intensity with the sustainable manner. Over to you, Amit.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chandok. We'll now move to Q&A round. We'll take only one question. Question is for Dr. Jain from ISA. It's a specific question on Venezuela. So the question is, are master's and doctoral study programs included in the training for member countries? Will ISA bring training and technology transfer to Venezuela? Second question, same. In my opinion, it is necessary to train personnel in the area of renewable energies in Venezuela. This policy should reach the universities in order to form a curriculum in this area. So they are also asking how Venezuela can access financing in renewables from ISA. Over to you, Dr. Jain.
So answering to the first question, I would like to mention here that we have already concluded one exclusive training session for Venezuela on the subject of design and engineering of solar rooftop and solar mini grids. We have already completed the training of one batch, and the procedure is like this, that if you want the training for particular batch, you have to request to ISA through your national focal point. So whatever, the list of participants and nominees were given to ISA, we have already concluded, and I think it was only 2-3 months ago. The similar program can be conducted again if you have a list of minimum 30 to 40 candidates, and that should be routed through your NFP. Regarding the second part was, Amit, can you repeat the second part?
The second part is how a country like Venezuela can access financing in renewables from ISA.
Yeah, that again, for that, you have to make request to ISA regarding by sending a brief project report directly to us through your national focal point, and subsequently we'll be reverting back to you. But you have to give us a brief project report, like what exactly you want to do, what is the capacity of your project, what is the technology you want, and what is the kind of financing going to be included in that. So we'll be reverting back to you. Thank you.
Okay, one last question for Dr. Chandok before we move for closing remarks. Dr. Chandok, what challenges or what risk NTPC face when they go outside India, and how these can be addressed?
Mr. Amit, this is important question which we are basically doing with respect to the research in the sense of project management consultancies. The important part when we talk about the six countries, we have the experience of Andaman as well as the Lakshadweep also. And the major challenges which we are facing with respect to the doing the execution part of that thing is the first of all the capital cost, the transportation cost. That is the important part. Parallel to that, the important component is that the grid is very fragile there. So that is important part we need to consider. And parallel to that is the weather conditions. So two important weather conditions they are facing most of the six country as well as in our India also, the Andaman as well as in Lakshadweep. We are seeing that lot of rain seasons are there, lot of intermittency, cloud movements are there. And because of that, the battery storage is very, very important component of this thing. So when we say that solar part is very important part, but at the same time, when you do the economic consideration of any kind of a system with a battery storage system, I can very well say that such type of systems are very much economically friendly with respect to these locations. So in that regard, we have seen that the grids are not that good, and at the same time, lot of intermittencies is there, and that leads to the failures of the many equipment. So that is the second important part which we need to see how to look into this thing. And third thing is that the challenge is with respect to the space availability of those things. Very important consideration here I would like to say is that it is not only the one solution which is important for such type of countries. We need to look into the total energy intensity of such systems. So when we try to do such kind of a optimization, the optimization of the total system is very, very important, because when you are sizing the system, the total cost comes from the sizing. And we need to understand that such type of software, such type of optimization software needs to be in place so that we can get a proper sizing of different kind of a component of this distributed system. And that way we can reduce the cost of this thing as well as the stability of the system. And the fourth important point is the awareness. Awareness is very important. We are already executing so many projects. We are trying to impart the different type of awareness about several type of programs. And as you know that there are several capacity building programs we are already executing in different part of the countries, different part of the globe, where we are trying to execute in the sense that this is not only the solar part but we need to understand the different technology as well. And when we talk of different technology, in the sense that the rooftop, the ground mounted, the floating, as well as the ocean thermal technologies, as well as the hydrogen. So several type of technology, how to culminate in a single landscape, that is the important part. So we need to consider not in sense of what energy we are trying to provide them, but at the same time, we need to see that whether they are able to meet their all demand with respect to their desalination, the water requirement, with respect to their cooking requirement, with respect to their electricity requirement. All these taken care. We need to come out with a different type of system which can be having a very low water energy intensity. And last important part is the policy advocacy. This is very important part, as I indicated earlier as well. Technology, policy, and finance. These three are important components. So these three challenges need to be looked into. And when we talk of the policy is basically we need to talk to their government. We need to understand them that this is basically the requirement of such countries and how to cater those things to the technological route and what assistance can be provided. Like in our case in India, Andaman, as well in Lakshadweep, we have come up with the greening of grids kind of a scheme where government of India is already providing 40% of financial assistance so that the kind of solar system along with the battery storage system can come. So such type of schemes are very important. So policy has to be taken care. And then bringing the finance as well. Once the technology is in place, once the policy is in place, finance may automatically come. So this is very important that we need to understand these three aspects in these countries. And that is the route which we are following when we are doing the project management consultancy for all these countries, irrespective of whether it is a solar park program or it is a basically mini grid program or a kind of a demonstration program. Thank you, Amit.
Thank you very much. It was very helpful and comprehensive, both from Dr. Chen and Dr. Chandok. Akshay, over to you.
Thank you, Amit, and thank you for very ably moderating it. Of course, gratitude to you and to our panelists as well. We will now move on to the closing remarks, and for that, may I invite Shreyamsa Beriganjan, who is a solar energy expert at the World Bank. Shrey, over to you.
Thank you, Ashay. Thank you to the International Solar Alliance, Dr. Ajay Mathur, World Bank, Ms. Xiaodong Wong, and Dr. Amit Jain, as well as the eminent panelists and the audience we have had today. It has been a wonderful discussion wherein we are able to kind of wean lessons from India to reflect on what could potentially be done and scaled up in various SIDs. Now, one of the key things that we did here today was that for SIDs, solar is not only important for climate change, but it's also critical to reduce costs, particularly given the high cost of imported fuel that most of the SIDs bring in and then subsidize. Now, Lighthouse will not only bridge the knowledge and technology gap, but it will also introduce some of the best practices across these island nations. When we talk about solar parks, solar mini grids are also important lessons from India, which could be replicated and reflected across various SIDs. Solar mini grids have the potential to provide cheaper electricity in some of the remote islands when we talk about SIDs. Now, technical and financial resources are constraints to the government in SIDs as well as in India. These initiatives will help the development of an institutional system that will target these key challenges. When we talk about renewable energy, when we talk about solar, it is also critical to kind of understand the kind of net zero commitments and NDC targets most of the SIDs have. It is very critical to align the work that most SIDs are doing to kind of mobilize global investments through IFIs and other agencies to be able to achieve some of these net zero targets. Today in the discussion, we also heard about 4 key focus areas for enabling RE across SIDs. There were policy initiatives. Now we understood that national missions were introduced in India and the government permitted 100% FDI in renewable. and also must-run solar status. Similarly, we heard about regulatory and infrastructure level changes, where states were persuaded and handholding was done. Bylaws were changed, solar park schemes was scaled up. Similarly, standard bidding guidelines were introduced, and energy storage was also introduced to enable RE sector. Financial level depreciation, custom duties, and various schemes were introduced for VGF. Similarly, renewable energy funding has resulted in reduction of interest rates significantly. India also saw the introduction of PLI scheme. Broadly, when we talk about most of the SIDS, we can see that some of the replications are already happening. We understood that Maldives is replicating through a 3-tier risk mitigation structure where it is using the World Bank guarantees, where we are also looking at escrow mechanisms as well as currency convertibility to bring down the cost of solar renewable energy in the island nation. The Maldives is also scaling up storage as we speak. So it will have lessons for other SIDS to kind of look at and replicate as we move ahead. Now, India's success story is not only driven by the utility sector, but also the other solar segment. India looked across different solar segments, similar to what we are trying to do in SIDS. While solar is a critical part of the input, for many SIDS, including storage and grid upgrades also is a critical part to kind of scale up the energy program. The role of World Bank has been phenomenal to achieve the success that we see in India. Now they're taking the same and replicating it across various small island developing states, such as Maldives, Seychelles, and Mauritius. The efforts in India resulted in converting a nascent market and envisaged a structural approach that kind of brought in these changes. Across SIDS, we also kind of hope to achieve the same results. Most of the technological solutions that have been explored right now, the critical one is going to be floating solar. For most SIDS have limited access to land. This is considered to be a very risky segment, but with the kind of structure that we are talking about with guarantees, with escrow mechanisms and everything, there is a potential to kind of replicate. The other thing that we also heard from the panel discussion was the solar rooftop is the most suitable for SIDS given the limited availability of space and land. There should be a multi-pronged approach in which the local discoms are receptive of net metering and other policies to kind of bring in and introduce some of the changes. Decentralized renewable energy is the solution. We heard a great line saying that you can delay a technology, but you can't deny it from JS. And while we are putting in the effort to kind of scale up operations, the International Solar Alliance has been critical in supporting various island nations in establishing bankable projects and developing renewable energy projects globally. So this broadly captures, I mean, the discussion that we had today. With that, I would like to thank the support we received from Intellicap in organizing this event as well. I'll pass it back on to Ashay if there's anything that you want to conclude.
Thank you, Shrey, for very succinctly summarizing the entire discussion. With that, we come to a close to this event. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and we hope that the insights have been useful and we can scale up solar in SIDS and many other countries as well with the continued support of the World Bank, FCDO, and ISA. Thank you very much.